Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fish Tank. I'm Fish, and it's that time again, Minion Masters patch notes. So 1.47 is going to be dropping tomorrow. If you're watching this live on YouTube, welcome. Let's find out what we're going to enjoy in this patch. Right, so as we probably are aware, that we are within the Arise expansion. So each expansion is 3 months with 3 seasons, each a month long. This is the second season within the Arise expansion. We've already had the DLC. The free DLC, of course, if you got it during the first week, for the Arise expansion. But what are we going to have in this version? Okay, so 1.47, as mentioned, this is going to be called Into the Void. Okay, it's dropping Thursday, the 18th of May. We've got a new season pass, new cards, new cosmetics, new balance changes, and of course, some bug fixes. Let's find out more about them. So, as always, there's going to be a season pass, a free pass, and the season pass. And as we can see here, the contents, this is the overall combined double pass business. So we've got the new cards, there's an awesome new skin, avatars, emotes, and as you can see from a lot of the cards that we're getting, this is going to be a Voidborne themed expansion. So, the first thing we need to look at are the new cards. So the first new card is Jez'Ra, the Voidmother. Now, Jez'Ra is going to be available at tier 49 in the free pass, or immediately at tier 1 in the season pass. But what does Jez'Ra, the Voidmother, do? Okay, so she's a 9 mana Voidborne minion. We have a look at her stats. She's got 675 HP, so fairly tanky. She does 130 damage. Do note, though, that it's a double attack. So she does two attacks of 65 damage each, so that means she's more effective against shielded units, for example. She only has a melee range and can only hit ground with a speed of 4. So that's her base stats, but she has an ability. So she has an ability called the Void Tear. Now, note here, if she does get a kill, it will reduce the mana cost of the Void Tear by 1. And when it says if her attack kills, an attack is the combination of both the 2 attacks. So 130 damage attack overall, 2 lots of 65, and together that is seen as 1 attack. So if something dies at some point during that attack, the ability is reduced by the cost of 1. But what does the ability do? Let's find out. Okay, so she has an interesting ability. As mentioned, it's called the Void Tear. So, this allows you to spawn either 2 elite swarmers in front of her, or 4 cowardly imps behind her. So you get the option when you're spawning it, depending on where you place it, either you get some tanky units up front, or some ranged support units behind. Now, it costs 3 mana, but of course remember, you can reduce the cost of that with her getting some kills. And as also always, the way that the abilities work is that it costs 3 mana, for example, if you haven't reduced it. Once you've used it, it will then replace itself in your hand, but be 1 more mana expensive. So it starts off at 3 mana as the base cost, you use it, the next one's 4, and so on. But of course you can reduce the cost of that. The whole point of this is to reduce the cost of her tear. I'm always going to get those two confused. So it'd be very interesting to see if we can get some value out of her. She is a 9 mana minion, so very expensive. But it'd be interesting to see what people come up with. And this is what she looks like in the game. So that's Jez'Ra, the Voidmother. Now the second card could be the card that's way more popular, but let's find out. So this is going to be called Morgrul's Mark. And this is going to be available at tier 38 in the free pass, or tier 22 in the season pass. But what does Morgrul's Mark do? So Morgrul's Mark is a spell. This is a Voidborne spell, 3 mana spell. So what it does is it gives an enemy minion taunt, and it summons 6 swarmers with rush around them. So let's just remind ourselves about those keywords. So taunt means that anything within range, any enemy within range will attack it, even those that only attack buildings. So things like a bazooka scrap or a rammer, for example, will attack taunted targets. So we could see some interesting use of Morgrul's Mark and things like a bazooka scrap. Think previously we had Vulture Prime and Bazooka Scrat. This could be similar to that. And Rush means there's a few units that have the Rush keyword, like the Screaming Scrat, means they have no summoning sickness, which they don't have to wait a second before they start moving and attacking. They are rushed into action. So what's the idea of this card? Well, the idea of this card, of course, is removal. So if there's some backline you want to remove, you're going to place this on it. That's going to get taunt, and then the Swarmers are going to spawn and be forced to attack it because of the taunt. But of course, the Swarmers are pretty weak and quite easy to deal with. But even if the Swarmers don't kill it, the taunt will remain on the enemy minion. So taunt on a big tanky unit is great, because that's what you want stuff to attack, right? But with this, we can put taunt on weak units, backline units, support units of the opponents, and our units will be forced to attack them. So it'll be interesting to see if people can use this. Remember, taunt does have a range. I think it has a range of 5, as according to the tooltip. So everything within range, enemy-wise, will attack that minion. So I think this is going to be pretty popular. It's only 3 mana, so it's pretty cheap. Nice little spell. And I'm sure people can get some good value and some good trades with it. So let's see what people come up with Morgrul's Mark. So those are the new cards we've got, and then as always we're going to have some new cosmetics, and we've got a skin. Check this out. This might be one of the best looking skins in the game. This of course is a Ravager skin, the Void Ripper legendary skin. This will be available in the season pass, real deep into the season pass, and I must say this looks amazing. Haven't seen too much Ravager recently. If you checked out my recent Minion Masters meta video, we checked out the leaderboards. We'll put a link up here somewhere for that if you want to check it out. Ravager was very sparsely shown on the leaderboards. Perhaps this season people are going to be more likely to play Ravager, maybe due to some balance changes, but maybe also due to this awesome skin. And of course, along with the skin, we've also got the Feeding Frenzy avatar, the Jez'Ra, the Voidmother avatar, and a new emote. We've got the Void Cleric emote. So cosmetics coming your way. And of course the cosmetics are all available in the season pass. So make sure you grab that, get your rubies ready at the start, and get yourself some goodies. Right, next up we have our balance changes. As always, we're going to look at the things that are buffed, made stronger, nerfed, made weaker, and rebalanced, changed in loads of different ways that we're not necessarily sure is a buff or a nerf, or it's a buff in some and a nerf in others. Anyway, let's dive in. Balance changes to the Cannon Roller. Attack cooldown. So that means it's going to attack more quickly, 2 seconds to 1.8 seconds. So I feel like a Cannon Roller is quite a strong card already, so I'm not sure this is necessarily needed or not, but it's going to be even stronger. So it will attack more quickly. Next up, we have a buff to the Crystal Sentry. Crystal Sentry, of course, in a bit of a weird spot at the moment. It did lose Mana Surge. It didn't really get any buffs to make up for that. Well, maybe a little, but not too much. But now it gets another buff, so the attack cooldown goes from 1.5 to 1.4 seconds, so slightly quicker, slightly higher DPS. Next up, we have one of the new cards from last season, Ghast. So Ghast, of course, is the guy that reses a skeleton if something near him dies, and his attack cooldown is going from 3.3 to 3 seconds, and his ability cooldown, which is how often he can resurrect those skeletons, is going down to 3 seconds as well. So a small increase for Ghast. Will it make him better? Will it make him more playable? We'll find out together. Next up, we have a pretty substantial buff to Rimmergul's Breath. So Rimmergul's Breath has been very, very strong when it was launched, and then it kind of got nerfed into oblivion, and then maybe it's starting to crawl its way back. So damage going up from 150 to 180. So as always, when we look at these these damage increases or decreases, we like to look at what it can or can't kill. So now it can kill things like Laylale and a Blast Monster, for example. So a lot more things it can kill. Remember, it will freeze things, but it does do true damage, so it will still do that full damage, even to frozen units. So expect to see more Breath the next season. Now we have a fairly new card, the Spell Dancer. So she's having her mana freeze reduced from 3 to 2. So that mana freeze is only payable if you spawn her with the Mana Surge, 6+ mana, and you get those arcane sparks that she shoots. So that means her 2 states are a 3 mana minion or a 3+2 5 mana minion plus removal. Will we see more of her? Potentially. Right, next up we have Stormy. So Stormy's in a weird spot because Stormy is a minion that shoots Chain Lightning. So every time Chain Lightning gets buffed, Stormy's happy. Every time Chain Lightning gets nerfed, Stormy is sad. And we've had a lot of Chain Lightning nerfs recently, and maybe some more coming. So Stormy's not been in a happy spot, and I know our good friend Zeus is a mod, Zeus is a god, is going to be happy that the health is going up from 175 to 200. Might not get any more shots off, but it's more likely to get its shots off. Right. A buff to Vux Clutch Cooker. Again, another fairly new card. So kind of a change in the way, not a change in the way he works, but an improvement in the way he works. So when he grapples something towards him, he will immediately switch to the Flamethrower. Currently there's a bit of a delay, which is not ideal. So now he will immediately switch to the Flamethrower after grappling to him. But also, any minions that he grabs and pulls towards him will also be stunned. So I think that's going to be quite a big bonus to him and anything else around him. So you can use him as a stun. Now, one thing to note is, of course, the grappling hook will pull things towards him unless they're immovable, things like a building or a mythic minion, and he will pull himself to them. He will not stun things that he doesn't move. So if he attacks a building or a mythic minion, he will not stun those. But Vuk could be in a better spot now. Okay, so that's all of the buffs. Now we get into the rebalances, and we've got a big change coming up. To a master, Milloween. Milloween has always been a nightmare to balance. She's always been the queen of cheese. And as you can see, we've switched to a smaller font here, which can only mean there's a lot to discuss. So the way Milloween works is kind of being changed quite a lot. It's a little confusing. Let's go through it and see if we can just unpick it. Right. So she has a basic attack, which fires 3 sparks. Similar, or the base, it's the same as what she has at the moment, right? Every time you cast a spell, she will get a bonus spark. Up to 5 extra bonus sparks. So that's every spell you cast is empowering her auto attack. So she starts at 3 and she can add an extra 5, so she can have a maximum of 8 sparks, 3 plus 5 bonus. Now the sparks do 10 damage each or 5 DPS. So you can get up to 80 damage, 40 DPS I think as her maximum auto attack, which is fairly substantial. She will also have some swirling visuals around her like the old Apep used to have to indicate the bonus sparks. Okay, so that's the change to her auto attack, but don't forget about the bonus sparks. They're going to become more important in a second. Okay, so the Arcane Golem, her perk 1. The timer on that is going to be reduced from 30 seconds to 25 seconds, but the timer doesn't start like it does currently when you play the previous one. It starts when the one that you played previously dies. So when your Golem dies, you've got to wait 25 seconds before you get the next one. The Arcane Golem is no longer Mythic. This is a nice change because Mythic was kind of a band-aid fix to stop you having multiple Golems out. So that means you can now move the Golem around with any spells like Impetus Blast, etc. It can die to the Arcane Bolt and Wizard Puff, whatnot. And I think that's a healthy change. Massive change here. The Arcane Golem can no longer attack air. It can only attack ground minions. It is a ranged minion, but its range is going down from 8 to 4. So it's going to be no longer it can attack air and far, far reduced range. Right, and then what happens when you spawn it? Remember we were talking about the bonus sparks that you get from the spells? When you spawn it, all of those bonus sparks that you've generated are consumed by the Arcane Golem, and it gets a level for each of those. Remember, up to a maximum of 5. And each level gives it extra 30 health and an extra 5 damage per level. But the Arcane Golem no longer gets bonuses from spells whilst it's in play. So when the golem's not in play, you're using spells to build up these bonus sparks, and then when you spawn the golem, those are consumed and the golem gets buffed. So the golem starts at 250 health and 30 damage. At perk 1, you can get it up to level 5, which will mean it's 400 health and 55 damage. So I don't think the health stats have changed from what they were before. I think the damage is a little bit higher than it was before, but of course it's much shorter range and can't hit air. So her perk 3, now the golems will gain 2 levels per bonus spark, which means that now the max is up to 10. So the golem can be spawned with 550 health and 80 damage. That's the maximum it can be spawned at. Also, perk 3 reduces the cooldown of her perks 1 and 2, so by 5 seconds, sorry. So you get the golem every 20 seconds, and you get your arcane missiles, her perk 2, 5 seconds more quickly than before. So basically, the golem has been changed from a do-it-all unit to kind of a tanky unit that's going to need support since it's short range and can't hit air. So very different change to the way the golem will work and how it can be played and how it needs to be supported. Now, this is a massive change. There's been lots of Milloween changes discussed in the PTR. This is what we've landed on. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Is it going to change? Is it going to kill Milloween? That's the concern, right? Is she too strong? Let's reduce her by changing her, but we don't want to kill her. Is that going to happen? We don't know, but we'll find out, I guess. I think she'll be kind of okay, maybe a bit underpowered, but I think the strats that you can run with her will definitely need to be amended, and I think that's where the healthiness comes in. The limitation of the golem with its range and can't hitting air, I think that limits somewhat how much cheese you can get away with. Okay, we can't spend the whole day talking about Milloween, but maybe we'll do a separate video to look at her in detail coming up. Let me know what you think. Right, next up we have a rebalance to Volko. So Volko's having his perk 1 and perk 2 switched round, just like we had Valorian not too long ago. So that means currently he gets to burn the bridge at the start, and then perk 2 is the Tempers Flaring with the embers on the bridge. That's going to be switched round, so he'll get the Tempers Flaring first and the burn the bridges second. So the idea here is that Volko is the Rage Master, right? And they want to, the developers want to encourage deck building and playment to be more around his rage and his ability to give minions rage. So getting the rage earlier means you have more rage for the longer haul. Of course, it means you get less burn the bridge, but 6 of one, half of a dozen of another. Got that one out. Okay, so now we get a change to the Harbinger. So the Harbinger's damage is going up from 250 to 275, so it can now kill a Ting, which it couldn't before. But it is having its range reduced from 14 to 12, and its speed increased from 4 to 5. Remember, faster speed is generally a nerf because instead of loitering far away, it gets closer to the enemy and can be dealt with. I think this change is because the Harbinger is a very difficult card for new players to deal with. They think that they feel like this is very hard to deal with because it just punishes you if you play into it, right? You need a little bit of strategy. You need to think, oh, I need to just let this come to me. I haven't got any long range or spells to deal with. So you need to play with a bit of joined up thinking to deal with this. And with no disrespect to newer players, they just don't have that skill set at the time. So this is probably one of those cards that historically in the lower ranks has been very, very strong, and in the higher ranks really drops off because people know how to deal with it. So they've kind of changed it. So it's still powerful, but it's going to be easier to deal with, right? It's not going to outrange things quite so much, and it's going to get into harm's way far more quickly. Right, here's an interesting one. The random pool. So the random pool is where you get a card from a random source, like Apex perks, future cards, past and present, blind date, walk and blind date, etc. If there's anything I've forgotten there. Now, ability cards have always been really bugged when it comes to getting them from random pools, whether they don't get the ability, whether they do, whether it's not discounted, and all sorts of nonsense. But it's been added. The ability cards have been added back, so I can only assume that those bugs have been fixed. So that should be interesting. Now, I still feel like there's going to be some situations where you just won't get the ability cards. So, for example, Walking Blind Date. You spawn the Walking Blind Date, the slot in your hand is filled, and then whatever pops out of the Walking Blind Date, could be an Azog, for example. There's nowhere in your hand, there's no space, there's no card slot in your hand for the ability to go. So either it goes to your 5th, or more likely, you just don't get it. But of course, always the other interesting part of this is that the random pool also dictates what can and can't be used in draft. So ability cards being added back to the random pool means that you can play them in draft. So we should see Azog, Zip, etc., available in draft. Right, next we get up to the nerfs. What's been strong? If you watched my Minion Masters meta video, you'll probably have a good idea of what's strong. Apep was everywhere. Apep's getting an attack cooldown increase from 2 seconds to 2.2. So this feels like Apep has dominated the meta, and he's just getting a slap on the wrist. I don't think this is going to change too much. I feel like Apep definitely needs more of a nerf. But let's see if this affects things in any way. Next up we have a change to Mordor. Mordor, although it didn't really dominate the leaderboards, has been pretty strong, especially in late game. So the tombstone timer is going up from 30 seconds to 35 seconds. So that's the time between tombstones. So when a tombstone dies, you've got to now wait 35 seconds for the next one instead of 30 seconds. Cage Prowler. This has been a very, very meta strong card. So it's going to be changed in a number of ways. So it's going to be nerfed from the health. The health of the building is going down from 400 to 360. The duration that you have to wait, or the duration of the entire building, is going up from 24 seconds to 30 seconds. And now the amount you have to wait before it's released is going up from 16 seconds to 20 seconds. So the important takeaway there is that firstly, you've got to wait longer for it to release. So that means potentially you've got to spend more mana or more resources defending it for longer. You could also argue that it allows you to bank mana for longer, so it could be better in some situations, but overall not. But also, the change to the stats means it takes less damage to deny the Cage Prowler. Remember, if you do enough damage to it, it will not spawn. Previously, it was 133 damage you had to do. Now you need to do over 120 damage. So less damage required. It doesn't really change too much about how the removal spells interact with it. I think maybe the Blade Star could kill it in one hit now, potentially. Maybe it takes one less Frost Feather from the flyby. Just a few little changes. But of course, if minions are damaging it, that's going to take less minion damage. Anyway, Cage Prowler nerfed. Right, we spoke about Stormy. Chain Lightning gets another slap on the wrist. The number of targets going down from 6 to 5. So the overall amount of damage it can do is going down. Chain Lightning, of course, this whole started when Chain Lightning went down from 5 mana to 4 mana. But it did get its number of bounces and stuff reduced. But it's still very, very strong. Again, we saw this in the meta video, very, very strong, and it's getting another slap on the wrist here. And of course, this 5 targets probably doesn't change too much about how it plays in solos, but definitely how it plays in duos. Right, Doom Cleaver, Crackgall variety Doom Cleaver, copies allowed down to from 3 to 2. So you can only have a maximum of 2 of these instead of 3. We saw these wildcarded in Mordor a lot. Again, they didn't dominate the leaderboard. They were there, but I came across this strat a lot. So outside of the leaderboard, this is definitely pretty widespread. So the reduction there, hopefully to bring that into a little more of a balanced state. Okay, next up we have the Future Past. So this is where you get a reduced cost card. So the mana cost is going up from 3 to 4, so it means a couple of things. Firstly, one more cycle to break even, and you're going to be more vulnerable when casting it. And of course, can't have one without the other. The future present, this is going up from 8 mana to 10 mana. So again, an extra cycle to break even and more vulnerable. And of course, if you're playing both the futures together, that's 3 more mana investment early game. It's really the idea of these cards is it's supposed to make you weak in the early game, but stronger later game. Currently, they don't feel weak early and just oppressive later. Will this change yet? We'll find out. Now, here's a Mayhem change. It's kind of just in the middle, just alphabetically. But Godric, he's the guy that gives lycanthropy to a lot of things. So lycanthropy can only affect minions with 150 max health or higher. Previously, it was 100 health or higher. And remember, originally when this Mayhem came out, I don't think there was a minimum. So that was insane. But now it's 150 max health or higher. So that means this change is going to stop you getting wolves from things like the Stun Lancers, Flame Imps, things like that. Things between 100 and 150 health. Right, Ritual of Servitude. Again, it's been a pretty strong card. So now, if it's untriggered, you're going to get the 6 mana minion, random. And if it is triggered, which it means it's the cheapest card in your deck, or among the cheapest card in your deck, then you're going to get an 8 mana minion. So what was it previously? Untriggered it was 6 or 7, and triggered it was 8 or 9. So no 7 mana minions untriggered, no 9 mana minions triggered. So less value for it, and overall a nerf. Rocket Scrat, very strong meta card. His range, we don't know what his range is, it just says special, but whatever it is, it's being reduced by 2. So as he's playing into other ranged units, he's not going to trade so well. Might lose his barrel shield or die entirely, where previously he would not. Another very strong meta card, Walking Blind Date. This is getting nerfed, so instead of previously where it gave you a random 4 mana minion, it's going to alternate between giving you a random 3 or 4 mana minion. So the first time you use it, you'll get a random 3 mana minion. The next time you use it, a 4 mana minion, and then it fluctuates between those. So potentially less chance to get a bounty sniper on the bridge. So a nerf, but maybe a good thing. We'll find out. But of course, Walking Blind Date, very strong in the current meta because you can just grab a bridge with it. And I guess it just suddenly occurred to me, it would be remiss of us to not mention the fact that the bridge changes that were being trialed are now permanent. So the survey results have been done. We'll put a video link up here somewhere if you didn't see those. So collision bridge grab, you can't do anymore, and placing units directly on the bridge. That was only trialed for a couple of seasons, but now it's permanent. Right, let's round this out with some bug fixes. So we've got a Mayhem bug fix, Shock Rock, Frost Shock Relic. It was damaging friendly units in Mayhem. It is no longer doing that. The Rocket Scrat had some kind of visual bug when it was jumping into a Suggerite shield. That's been fixed. There was also some minions glowing when they were spawned other than from their eggs. So think about, for example, a Reboomer that comes out of a tombstone, for example. They were glowing bright white. That's been fixed. Unholy Ground leaving some weird graphics. Also fixed. AFK bot removed during the tutorial. Nice change for newer players. And the black hole visual effects duration fix. So that was the visual effect of the black hole was actually slightly shorter than the actual length of the spell, so it kind of looked weird. And those are the bug fixes. And that's it. That is patch 1.47 Into the Void, dropping Thursday the 18th of May. We've got a new season pass. We've got 2 new cards, Jez'Ra the Voidmother and Morgrul's Mark. We've got those new cosmetics, including that awesome looking Ravager Void Ripper skin. I may have to play some Ravager now after that. And of course we had all those balance changes and bug fixes. That is it. We got through it. Great work, everybody. Now let me know in the comments, what do you think about the new cards? What do you think about the changes? Any questions you have, of course, let me know. I will always answer. We've had quite a lot of new videos recently here in the fish tank, so check them out. If you want to keep up to date on what's going on, learning new mechanics, checking out some awesome games, all sorts of stuff like that. We're closing on 2,000 subscribers, which is amazing, and I appreciate every single one of you that's joined along in the journey. If we've got any new people, unsubscribed, and if you want to keep up to date with all the Minion Masters news, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Really does help and put a smile on Fishy's face. I think that's it. We did it. Is there anything else? No, that's it. Okay, I'm Fish. Oh, one last thing. Awkward wave.